Hi guys, and welcome back for some more Duelyst. Very excited for this one, because I have some spoilers for the first Duelyst 2 expansion. I know you're all here for them, so let's not waste any time and just have a look at our first one. So of course, I'm very excited to talk about Flame Wreath. It's one of my favorite cards from Duelyst 1, and it's back with a completely warranted, I might add, adjustment. But this could be the return of a set of cards that really care about movement and being moved and being teleported around. We should first talk about what this card does. When it moves for any reason, including teleports, reactivations, and of course just its normal move, it deals 1 damage to all the enemies around it. So basically, this is Songhai's version of Makantor. Well, actually, probably a better parallel is Sunriser, given you need to pay into it to trigger the effect more. So basically, the more you can move this, the more damage it's gonna rack up. Unlike Sunriser, for example, you can't though hit the same space twice in a row, if that makes sense. So you can AoE one spot, then you have to move off it before you can come back to it and use it again. And in some cases there is just one perfect spot. Though if you get a juxtaposition to have full control over all the positioning in the game, then you can do some pretty cool stuff. Alright, let's talk about how strong this is going to be, because if you played Duelyst 1, you'll know this card for sure had its fans, and actually almost single-handedly brought Kalios back to relevance. He was lagging behind, and then he got brought to a good spot in comparison to the other generals with his Blink BBS. The eponymous Flame Wreath, the Wreath of Flame AoE effect, has been reduced to just 1 damage. In Legacy mode, if you go play Flame Wreath, it'll go and deal 2 damage. But in return, we're adding Rush, which means it's a little less reliant on other cards, in hand to combo with it. It can self-start a little bit. And I think it's only fair, to mention that with 2-draw, you might find it a little less punishing to accrue the cards in hand, or after you use them to recover from a Flame Wreath turn. In Duelyst 1, you kind of had to include Spelljammer and Bakazuri, and hopefully get some Scroll Bandit attacks in there to keep your hand size full. That should be a little less of a concern, maybe. So maybe you just feel free to dump all your Juxes and focuses on your Flame Wreath, and then fuel back up with Heaven's Eclipse later, and your natural 2-draw. Not sure how true that's going to be. We'll have to see. The other thing to note is that it's lost a point of HP. It's a modest 3 HP, so it should be a little easier to clear, which I think is a reasonable thing, because if you can't clear it historically, you're in a world of trouble. With that in mind, it's worth saying that if you want to make use of the rush and use the rush to attack, use the attack action, it might be just worth considering if you actually want to do that, or if you want to make it difficult for your opponent to clear. And maybe you could even try and end your turn in a Flame Wreath is in a protected spot where none of the enemies can actually hit it, and then they have to use a removal to clear it. Or if they can't clear it, it's ready to teleport onto them again next turn. But yeah, I do think that with only 1 AoE damage isn't quite as bonkers as we might have known it. But it's still going to be amazing at clearing swarms, ping off artifacts, and with Rush you can also burst quite nicely with it. Just slap a Saber Spine on this bad boy and watch it go. I'm very excited to see this one back in the game, and also expect to see this one crop up in weekly puzzles, because there's a lot of ways to move it about in interesting sequences. Sometimes it's a bit overblown, but this card does create some interesting turns here and there. It's definitely a fun one to be the one controlling it, not necessarily always as fun to go against. But I think with only 1 damage, it should be a little more reasonable. And actually, our next card is something that can combo nicely with it. Songhai getting another movement effect. This one's quite interesting. Firstly, you can see some sort of parallels to Magnetize. Though arguably Songhai's affection can make better use of a teleport. Not sure if that's true, because they might just have better options. Let's first just describe what it does. It's a 1-mana spell, Backstep, and what it does is it teleports an allied minion behind your general. and adds a blink to your action bar. Now, veterans will have an idea for what blink is, but I better actually show what it really does in Duelyst 2 here, which is a little different than you might be remembering. It's 0 mana, but it's sort of an ephemeral kind of spell that has a sort of single use this turn only. For this card, I'm personally interested in the implications, what we might be seeing here in relation to how like a BBS is being brought back. We've got creation of a blink card. Now, as a disclaimer, they haven't told me anything. I don't know, so it's all just speculation. But I do kind of like the vibe of this ephemeral spell that disappears. You got to use it this turn. Although, you know, it's not necessarily something they have to only use for these like signature spells. I kind of like the mechanic in general. I think it's pretty interesting. You know, it doesn't have to just be on spells. You could have like a big expensive minion or something. Use this sort of idea. And we've seen from Smarty's reveal of Echo Mage yesterday that like this is just a effect that they're willing to sort of put in the game. There's no particular reason to think that this is just something that they're only going to put on BBSs. So we'll have to see if and when these, you know, some of our favorite spells and identities start making a comeback. But very excited to reveal the first one returning. I think it's pretty cool. With this particular example, there's like one thing I'm slightly worried about is that, you know, it potentially messes up the balance of spell triggers if the blink is a spell. I find this is also a problem with the original BBSs, like running Shaddai Arcanists or something. You had a wealth of spell triggers, a bit easy to access them. But, you know, for speculation on it, if this is the direction that they're going to be going for bringing BBSs, is probably not too helpful. We'll just have to see. I want to get back to the card itself, because first let's take a look at how much range it could sort of add to your zone of control. In this like completely plausible example where your opponent's on the middle tower, it's body blocking for some guy they don't want you to kill. And in red here, we can see the frankly pathetic range of our backline Flame Wreath can control. It's basically on running defense at the moment. But with just casting Backstep, and of course it's normal movement, suddenly we have reach of all these tiles. But then if you add in a blink, and of course I've run up here in this example, but you could easily go below Arjun as well. So with that, you can reach the whole damn board if you want. Like, that's a fairly, you know, normal example. That doesn't seem crazy to me that this kind of situation might crop up. But this is just the range a Magnetize adds, and that card does not see any play. Magnetize even pulls in enemies. I was thinking that arguably this card will be at its best if you're enabling two different targets to take important attacks that you can't do otherwise. Back to our original example, you know, you could have the Flame Wreath backstep behind you, clear the Mystic, and then use the blink to get Lantern Fox to go hit Arjun in the face. Though arguably the much more obvious example is just like something that cares about being moved like Flame Wreath, being moved twice. If there are more effects like that in the expansion, then yeah, that would have some use there. I think these are plausible examples, but they're also, you know, pretty convenient ones. Possibly things in a real game might not be so perfect. Let me know what you guys think though about this one, because my first reaction is that it's a little too low impact to be widely played, like when it's competing against, for example, Juxtaposition. But, you know, it's a board game. Sometimes these effects can be deceptively powerful, or, you know, they just need to find the right home. It doesn't quite scream All-Star to me. I'll wait to see people play this and if it makes the cut. And finally, some good news for Scrollbounder haters. Looks like you'll be safe from that particular menace. Here is an innocuous little guy, Rhythm Weaver, a 1-mana 2/1 Arcanist that when it takes damage, you draw a card. It's an Arcanist, so probably most people's immediate thought is to get this in play with an Owl Beast and turn this into a draw engine. Especially with how cheap it is, you know, at 1 mana, it should be no problem to cast this and a couple of spells at the same time, even like early in the game. Obviously, depends on if you get that draw, you need the Owl Beast in play before you can do that. And that definitely sounds like something you can and probably will do. That seems like it'll happily fit into an Arcanist deck as a, you know, as a draw engine, a way to draw into, you know, more spells or your important arcanists such as Outbeast itself. I'm personally wondering though if this isn't just secretly good enough to fit into sort of any Songhai deck that's looking to optimize down just to the most important and powerful cards if you're running like a combo or a very streamlined deck. You know, just for the same reasons that Ghostlinks sees play. Of course, we've seen from decks with over 40 cards or plenty of 1 and 2 orbs that consistency isn't the only quality that matters. But for 1 mana, this guy provides. You get an annoying little body that your you know, opponents are going to have to deal with. Because, you know, you're playing Songhai, you can threaten to Jux it or like toss a Saber-Spine Seal, killing edge on it. And even if you don't do that, like for 1 mana, you get 2 damage or something. And then, you know, you get your card back when it dies because they're not going to use like hard removal or dispel on it. And if they do, then you sort of got that card off them anyway. You know, it reminds me of Gotatsu quite a lot. It's maybe a little harder to get the damage exactly where you want, because, you know, obviously it's very easy to get the damage exactly where you want with Gotatsu. But, you know, the upside of having a body that you can like, do stuff with is real. You know, you can buff its HP with a Killing Edge, or maybe even like a Mist Dragon Seal and kill off a Wraithling and then draw off it more times. And you know, when that does happen, you'll probably be very happy. But I think even without that, yeah, this is just an annoying little threat. Your opponent's like gonna have to deal with, and when they do, you'll probably come up a card or like a half a card. These things kind of matter, and it's so easy to play off like a mana tile or, you know, alongside a turn where you have to play some removal because it's just so cheap. In fact, I don't wonder if the main problem for this card right now might be how it's a pretty bad top deck. And you might just want more impactful cards with your limited deck space, right? If you're running 13x3, when you just draw this, you know, drawing that card that actually helps you a turn earlier, like matters more than having a little cheap guy. But if you draw this early on in the game and just plop it down, I think you will be quite happy with this. Maybe this just ends up only going in Arcanist decks, but maybe, you know, it'll find a home in like these really streamlined, consistent decks that just want to cycle as fast as possible to their like best cards. Right, let's get them all back on the screen here as a little encore, a little collection of Songhai comments here. Yeah, let me know which one is your favorite. If you're excited to play with any of these, I certainly will be building a Flame Wreath deck and seeing if it's as good as I remember it to be with these changes. Curious to see if any other Bloodborne spells, you know, make their way back. Do you guys like this implementation for the Blink? I think it's, you know, they'll probably listen to feedback if it's well received or not. And Rhythm Weaver, am I crazy in thinking it's good? Are you going to add this to your deck? Is it just like too low impact? You know, got a better things to do than spend 1 mana or a 2-1? I guess we'll all find out together when the expansion comes out and the Hive Mind gets to work. We will see. Yeah, I'm very excited for it.